Uh-oh. Woo!
What's up, peoples?
We are back.
How are you, Dano?
Yeah. Hope you enjoy the funkalicious tunes from our boy LJ MTX, DJ Metronics.
Funkalicious?
I made it up.
I like it.
It was funky and it was delicious. And I don't know, it's Friday, right? So happy Friday to you, Mark. What's going on?
Happy Friday to you, my friends. It's good to see you again. How was your Memorial Day weekend?
Uneventful, thank God.
Yeah,
So,
good.
Yeah.
So what do we got lined up for today?
Well, we have episode 12. Episode 12.
They're going fast.
It's all about failure. We're going to talk about failure today because here in Everything to Gain, we're all about talking about making positive changes in your life, whether it's your work life, if it's your personal life. But why do you have to make a change? Maybe it's because something messed up. Maybe you failed at something. And so Mark and I have we've been around for quite a while. We've had many jobs. We've been laid off a couple times here and there. I think everybody can relate to that.
Dude, first time I was laid off, I was tears in my eyes, box in my hand. Couldn't figure it out. Like the 15th time I was laid off, I was like, I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. It's all.
By number
all
3 or 4, you're like, all right, it's the system.
So anyway, thank you to the audience for joining us today again. This is episode 12. We've had 12 episodes, so this is our 12th episode, and 90% of podcasts fail after the 3rd episode. And then the 10% that's left, 90% of what's left doesn't make it to episode 20. And we're going to steamroll way past 20. And, we will get there. We will get there.
I'll tell you this, and maybe this relates to the failure stuff, but like it's smooth and it's fun. Like when you're enjoying what you're doing, this is how you know if you're moving in the right direction in life in general, I would argue.
Right. It shouldn't be work, right? It shouldn't feel like work if you're doing the thing that you have fun with, right? With the people that you like to hang out with, you notwithstanding. So,
Fair enough.
Anyway, so we're going to go over some ideas around failure today. Audience, please chime in with your questions and comments. We welcome them. This is live, so when you ask a question, we will answer it live.
Right. So I want to add something, if I may. People generally tend to think failure is bad. We're gonna argue and prove to you otherwise today. And coming out of the industry we both come out of, Dan and I come from finance. For those who don't know, failure is generally not an option in that space. But in reality, in life, it becomes your guidepost.
Absolutely right. It's okay to fail, right? It's okay to fail. So let's go and let's look at the definition of failure and let's try to figure it out here. So what is failure, right? It's not doing something the right way.
It's sucking at the thing.
Sucking at the thing. We suck.
Right. Everybody knows when something sucks. Like that's failure is pretty. There'll be no shortage of people to point out the failures for you. Don't worry about that.
Right. And it's always easy from the cheap seats, right? So
peanut gallery.
Yeah, the peanut gallery is always there to remind you of how you screwed up, right? And so there's always that negative kind of perception, right? It's a stigma to have failed. Of course, we all know of like many famous entrepreneurs that have done great work after they failed, right? So, but anyway, why do we fail? Why do we fail?
I think we have this belief that we're not allowed to fail, number one, and we have this understanding that like no one else fails, which is none of that is true. And I think that I would argue in times of static, non-changing, it's always like it always was, failure could be considered bad because why would you fail? But in real times of change, like where we are today, it's the reality is you have to pivot and adjust what we're doing here. You're going to fail. You got to expect it.
Right. So, okay. So it could be that it is outside of your control, right? So industries are changing, right? Maybe your industry is dying, right? So I think back to Jimmy Buffett. Okay, Jimmy Buffett's song, "A Pirate Looks at 40," right? He's a pirate, he's a smuggler, but there's nothing to do anymore. There's no more pirating, no more smuggling. So he's a guy that's 200 years too late, right?
The cannons don't thunder. There's nothing to plunder. I'm an over 40 victim of fate.
Oh my God, look at you! Look at you! I didn't know you were a head.
I think the lyric actually is my occupational hazard is my occupation is just not around.
That's exactly correct. Right. So that is the perfect analogy because it's totally out of its control. So what he's going to do? He's going to reset. He's going to go back down and hang out with his friends and then go find the next thing. Right. And that's really what what you got to do when your industry's dying. Right.
Yeah.
So horse and buggy to sports car, same thing. Right. And we're going through that now. So sometimes it's timing. Right. Sometimes it's timing. So
I think the lesson there is it might not be your fault. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like it's okay if it there's no whether you did something wrong or the world changed on you. The reality is the reality. It's time to make a move.
Right. Like maybe you showed up late for an interview because the subway got stuck. There's that there's the one like video of that kid who was going to his NYU graduation and he got stuck in the subway. The subway was like not going anywhere for 2 hours. So they had like the impromptu graduation on the subway. And, you got to make the best of what you got, right? Yeah. So sometimes you're just late, right? And so timing, I think everybody forgets timing.
So, from the non-career perspective, from the entrepreneurial side of it, it is non-stop failure. It's getting kicked in the teeth every day and sucking at the thing. That's what it is to do your own thing. So you got to just be okay. Like this is how life works. This is the job that I signed up for.
Right. You've got to be okay with ready, fire, aim, right? Just going for it, right? And then iterating, right? And you're going to pivot anyway. Everybody has to pivot. So, maybe actually we've heard this. Maybe it's another division of your company that failed, right? And it affected your job.
Is it the Lehman Bond department?
Yeah. Oh no, Lehman Bond department. Gosh, they kind of.
So I'm at UBS when Kwaku Adeboli has the $1 billion error. I forget what it was. They call us on an office in New York City, and the one guy raises his hand in the back, and he's like, "Dead serious. They're telling us there's been a $1 billion error in London." This kid's like, "Is this going to affect bonuses?" And they were like on stage. The guy's like, "No, we budget for this." I turned to the guy next to me, like, "They budget for $1 billion." Like, oopsie.
Yeah. Right.
Next week we're all fired.
So okay, so the failure, right, can be completely out of control, right? You got laid off because some guy had a fat finger error, while trading. It's going to happen, right? So it's not your fault, but you still feel like a failure because you got let go or your bonus sucked or whatever, right? And so you got to overcome that fear of failure, right? You got to overcome the fear of failure. So I actually wrote this note before the show. So we end up imagining the worst that can happen, right? So we also imagine what other people may think, and that
we magnify it. We make it worse.
We totally amplify it, right? And we catastrophize that, right? It's the biggest, but it ends up being the biggest waste of time. But if we focus on that, right, the catastrophizing of the worst that possibly could happen, then the possibilities of winning actually shrink. And it almost becomes like a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
So
I've heard this, put it this way. You're having the worst day of your life. The phone rings, you pick it up. Someone tells you won the lottery. Suddenly you're in a good mood. What's changed? Nothing. Your perspective changed. Your belief, your head is what this is about.
Right.
Fear of failure is nothing about, it's just this.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was reading this thing about the psychologists, right? They said that 85% of what we imagine, right, like negative stuff that could happen, actually doesn't happen, and then there's like another like 12% that is not as bad as we thought it was going to be. Right, and so you're literally worrying about 3% chance, of the worst possible thing.
This is what I tell my kids: if worrying will help change the situation, do it. If it's not going to change, if it's out of your control, just skip that phase and go right to action. What do we do here?
Right. Right. And so what are some of the strategies?
So I think number one is, like I said, visualizing it. You have to visualize that you're going to win. This is,
Perfect.
I think it was Joel Osteen. I love this line. Your test becomes your testimony. Like if you think about every great movie, it starts off at the low point of the hero. Rocky sucks. He's living in the gutter, and like Harry Potter's an orphan. And then it becomes this like climb out. That's where you start your story. So in your head, you have to visualize, I'm the hero of my story.
So top athletes, right? Like Olympic athletes, they actually visualize them, hitting the ball perfectly. They actually go through that exercise, and there's sports psychologists, which is a huge industry, sports psychology, and it goes all the way to like little kids, right? That they envision that it's okay to not score the goal, but here's the thought process of actually getting it done.
Right. All these guys that when Michael Phelps wins by 1/100th of a second, he's not in 1/100th of a second better fitness shape. It's
Right.
this.
Right. It's 100%. So, okay, so that's visualize success. That's one thing.
I think this next thing would be having a good support network, having a structure that you operate with people who are doing what you're trying to do. Call it networking, or call it, it's Alcoholics Anonymous. Get with the people who are trying to get where you're trying to go. And that
Right.
helps you get there.
Right. Maybe start a podcast with some guy you've known for 30 years.
That long? Yeah. Right. Or maybe don't.
Right. So that's two. Okay. Get a support network, right? And
yeah, all right. So visualizing, get a support network, celebrate the small victories. So nobody has more ice cream around my house for no real reason than my family. Like if the littlest thing happens, we're going to get ice cream, guys. Like I happen to like ice cream. But like you have to be the one to celebrate when you do have small wins, because no one else is going to come out of the woodwork and be like, hey, great job. Nobody cares. So you have to be your own biggest cheerleader in life.
So now that you're like in your mid-50s, are you like a butter pecan guy?
Dude, I'm a chocolate guy, and I'm in my mid-20s. Let's just, we're visualizing.
I mean, dude, I can't believe that you're in your 50s. You haven't aged a day since I've known you. So, okay.
You should see the picture in my attic. Sorry.
Got it. Okay. Number 3, learning from failure. What can you learn?
Right. All right. So I'll tell you so many anecdotes I could share with this one. I remember the first error I made in trading. I remember the first time I misbilled a customer from my own company here. Like there's been tons of times early on in my sales career where the customer was kind of on the fence and I tried pushing them. I'm pushing. And you learn pretty quickly, okay, that's the bad way to do it. It didn't work. The next go around, I remember the customer telling me like, I'm not sure I want to think about it. And I gave him a literal list, index card I'd written out, prepared beforehand, of all the reasons he should not do business with us. And he was like, what's this? And I'm like, these are the common objections I get normally. I'm sure that's what's on your mind. I'm happy to address.
It's the kill sheet. Remember, we used to draw those up.
Explain the kill sheet to these folks. They might not know what that is.
So in sales, you practice the responses, the negative responses. I'm not going to buy your product. And why, right? You practice the why so that you can have a retort to the negative response. And we used to call it a kill sheet, and we used to get I would actually do this for when I was a sales head, that I would actually practice being the client, and I would grill my sales
team.
And there's a bit of role playing there, but it helped. So it makes it so much smoother. So it's just like practice. It's just
you learn that by screwing it up the first time.
Right. So it's all practice, right? And actually, this is how I used to coach in fencing. So when I coached in fencing, I would say to my students, it's okay to screw up, right? It's okay to lose, because it's just fencing and it's just sports. You either win and learn, or you learn, right? In tournaments, usually there's just one winner, right? And, any kind of tournament, like French Open, whatever, right? The Olympics, there's a gold medal winner, right? And so it's either win and learn, or you just learn. There's no winning and losing anymore, right?
I want to spotlight that, Dan. That is our earlier point, though, about redefining failure, because you have just redefined failure as learning, not losing. Great point.
Right. So learning from failure, right? And okay, gosh, I really shouldn't have done that thing that screwed me up. Let's go and do it slightly differently, right? Same thing.
That's how humans learn.
Same thing with a kill sheet, right? And I used to train the traders on the desk. right? Back at the back in the classes, and the best way to learn is to really screw up bad. And I would
Yeah.
tell them stories of how I screwed up, like, oh, I had sell instead of buy, or I put an extra zero. Oops, like when you fat
Yep.
finger a zero, right? I mean, those are real life examples. But I always said I can only tell you what I've done. The best way to learn is to screw up yourself.
How many times have you said to yourself, it was a really bad screw up, you lost money, something happened, you got fired, whatever, but in your head, you're like, I'm that lesson learned, never doing that again.
Right.
That's
Right. And then timing comes into it again, right? Timing comes into, because that one moment in time, is that going to define you, for
no,
the rest of your life? It can't,
it's a
right? It
choice.
can't. It's a choice to let it either define you or not define you. So
So where does this perspective of the negative connotations of failure come from, Dan?
that comes from either tradition, right? So sometimes we say tradition is bullying from your ancestors, right? So, um, but but a lot of it comes from the education system,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So education system, let's celebrate your A, right? And we're
Ugh.
not going to celebrate the person that struggled, and that struggled to get a C, right? That they maybe they're just really bad at math. Maybe they're dyslexic. They can't really read, right? And so they struggle to get a C, but that's a huge victory for them because they were getting D's and F's before, right? And so a lot of that I think negative perception around
So I have a
around
little bit of a beef
failure.
with the school system here. I tell my kids this all the time. Someone that you'll never meet is going to decide what the test is going to be focusing on, whatever topics they decide are important. And they're gonna brand you all like cattle, right? They're gonna give you a little sear the back of your hind with like an A or a B or whatever. It's been a piece of paper
Yeah.
digitally, and then you get to compare and contrast the kid. That's
Yeah.
that's the system basically.
Yeah, I mean, I can be the first one to admit that I'm the first Asian person to ever get a C in calculus. Okay, which
That's illegal.
I mean, it's an Asian F, right? I mean, a C a C
All
in
right,
any
well,
grade in any class is an F, but like in calculus, that's like the worst thing that could ever happen. But
as
that
the
did happen to me. So
as the Caucasian of the duo here, I actually did get an F in Lehigh at calculus. And then my mom, I remember that she was like, maybe you're not cut out for college freshman year. I'm like, and by the way, engineering university, like super hard stuff. I'm like, no, I can do this. I take the class again, back to back Fs. So there's no question about the failure there. The reality is, do you let it define you, right? The school system will try to make you feel that failing is bad. That is literally the unspoken message of every school system. Don't fail.
right,
But if you look at
right,
it like everything that school does, my real fast rant here is backwards, right? The way school generally operates, failure is bad. There's only one right answer. You can't pair up as a team. Like all that stuff is wrong in life. But in that system, they define failure as bad.
right. And it's really important to find a teacher that actually knows how to support you the right way, and it's either a teacher or a coach, right, or a mentor, right? Like eventually you want to get there. And it's also like in soccer, right? Like or any kids soccer game, that if your team didn't win, then sometimes the coach might make you feel bad,
Oh
right?
God.
And
Yeah.
like who cares, right? It's now at the other end, I also don't believe in getting participation trophies either, right? It's always good to be on the losing end so that you can strive to be better.
I think that fits right in. Like, let the kids lose. When you win, you win, and when you lose. But if when you lose, you get some sort of recognition, then it makes the win irrelevant.
Yeah, yeah, and so the high school fencing team that I used to coach, I said, hey, everybody, the fencing and what we do in the meets is really just an excuse for team dinners. So it
Or
took
ice cream.
or ice cream, right, right, and so it took the pressure off of them striving to do better in fencing. Let's just keep learning, and if you win, you win. If you don't, that's okay too,
I'm going
right?
to tell a
And
personal story about you, Dan. When I have a teenage
uh-oh,
son who's fencer, and Dan is a very accomplished. Those who don't know, Dan is a world class fencer,
no,
and so he was
dude, not anymore. Not
came by the house like a year or two ago, whatever, and he was showing my son some moves and stuff. And I remember he said to my son, "The goal isn't to win or lose; it is to make good actions." I never forgot this, Dan. I've never fenced in my life, never touched a blade, but what great advice! And I still say that to him. It is it doesn't matter. Don't focus on the win and the loss kind of thing. There's no failure. It's a never-ending game, fencing. You're never going to be done fencing. It's
Yeah.
just you lost this bout. Okay, get back on the horse.
Yeah, you look at like the best of the best, right? Like Kobe Bryant, right, or Michael Jordan, right? They focused on perfecting the move, the action, so that when it came game time, it was easy.
That's the famous Michael Jordan commercial. I've missed 9,000 shots in my career, 26 times
Right.
been given a game winner and missed. That's why I win.
That's right. Right. So after you have overcome the fear of failure, you've learned from your failures, then it's ready to shine, right?
Time to take action. So I would say the next step after that would be to find someone to help you get to the next level. Coach, mentor, call it whatever you will. But if you failed at something, it means you're lacking informational knowledge or some aspect of what you need to know. Find someone who can help you.
And it could be just I like to call it an accountability partner,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's almost like a workout buddy, right?
That's a
So
great way to put it.
right, so it's a failure buddy, right? So you help you get through that, get through that next set, get through that next action, right?
I'd also argue that on the back end of getting a coach or a mentor or whatever you want to call it, which is separate from an accountability buddy. I like that. You want to have a formalized program, whether you build it yourself and you follow your own instructional steps or you go find something online, it doesn't matter, but have a formal structure that you're following to get you stepping
Right.
stones out of darkness.
Right, and there's so much content and so many things you can learn online, right? And it's all about skills. It's all about practice. Like it's okay to if you're just learning, it's okay to screw up, right? It's that saying, be brave enough to suck at something new, right?
Right.
So, and then my favorite way, and we've talked about it before, my favorite way to learn is to network with people you don't know,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And I think the failure of how many people approach networking just in general, and I think this is not generational. I think it's across generations. They number one, they will meet and network with people they know, right? And unfortunately, the people that you know can only
Yeah. Only
think
help you
of
so
you
much.
in a small box, right? They think of you in a small box because of it's the context of how they know you. So I'm a huge proponent of networking with people you don't know because you're going to learn infinitely more. Like it's divided by zero, right? You'll learn infinitely more from people you don't know. You have no connection with
So
because
that
their
requires a step
experiences.
first, though. I would add that there's got to be a strategic curation of who you should be networking with, who
Right,
can help you before you
right,
get to that.
right. I mean, it's understanding where you want to go,
Yep.
right? Or the directions you want to go. It doesn't have to be one direction. It's not necessarily North Star, right? It could be multiple directions, and then go meet those people. There's my favorite book of all time, the greatest networking book, Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. Shout out Keith Ferrazzi. He is just the best networker that's out there. Right?
I think you're on his payroll. You've sold more of these books for this guy than anybody I know.
It's really funny. He and I were actually DMing the other day about it. He
I'm
goes,
not
"How
surprised.
many have you sold?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I've given away probably 20." You
Yeah.
know,
You talk
so,
about it all the time, though, but it is an unbelievable book, and it's right. Networking is a way to advance yourself. If you're turning around failures, you want to get with the people who are going to help you get where you're going, and that's networking, but be smart about it.
yeah. And actually, if, audience, again, I invite you for your questions, but to the audience, if you want to know a little bit more about what we've talked about as far as networking, go back to our first couple episodes. We talk about networking a ton in the first couple episodes of everything the game. So,
A
um,
little inside baseball here. Dan and I have done a bunch of courses around networking together, and that's probably how this all started. To be honest with you, because we're in kind of separate businesses at the beginning, but networking becomes the key to unlocking success in every aspect and overcoming failure. It is probably the number one thing.
yeah, I mean, you got to overcome the fear. Overcome the fear, and the more you network, you realize that wow, everybody here like that I'm meeting, it's interesting that they've all failed at certain points in their life. Everybody fails, right? It's like the book, everybody poops. Everybody's got to poop, right?
Of course, I was going to get to this at some point.
Of course,
The
come
thing
on.
I would highlight though that there's a lesson in failure that people sometimes are so quick to miss. Go back through your life and review like what were my big misses here? Where did I screw up? And what was the lesson, the takeaways? Like the goal of failure, and it is a goal, is to learn a lesson. So I don't do it again.
Right. Right. I think people have that shame, right? We go back to the defining failure and overcoming the fear, right? I think people, they feel shame. Oh, I mean, that negativity is just a waste of time, right? Get to the next thing. And especially in this time, right? The whole world is in flux with AI, all the innovation that's out there. There's only one way to go, right? And it's forward.
I tell
There's
my kids,
only one.
forgive yourself quickly and move on. God knows I've screwed up many times, and I'm like, okay, I can really roast myself over this for a long time. Last week, I lost money hiring a vendor that ended up ripping me off. So I'm like, I thought I learned this lesson. The point is,
Really? Wow.
you're going to be like, all right, I got lesson learned, move on quickly. What is extract the valuable lesson from your past failures? Take the step, like sit down with a pen and paper and be like, got it. This one's in the books now.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I forgot to tell you this. I had a client decide not to pay me.
Yeah. You're welcome to the club.
Yeah. Right. So like,
entrepreneurship.
Right. So, we're all like entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, whatever. Make sure that you have a really good agreement and, have your client have some skin in the game, right? Make them have some skin in the game by having them pay a little upfront. Why not? Right. Half now, half later. Right. So they have skin in the game.
So I actually had this conversation with the dude I was talking about. I'm like, listen, I fired him. I'm like, I know this is where this is going. You should have delivered. You didn't. I get what. Keep the money. We're done. And he was like, well, no. The point is, you learned your lesson. I've learned my lesson from previous. What's the next thing? What else? What other lessons can they take from the failures they've had, Dan? What should they do?
I think just reflecting. Number one, get your lessons. Take risks. Right. Take risks, not huge risks. Like, we're not asking you to jump off a building, but I mean, take risks, because when you take a risk, that means you're ready for possibility.
Yeah.
Right. And
I think you become more comfortable taking those risks when you're less afraid of the failure. When you recognize you've reframed it and it's a learning lesson and it's not going to kill you, right? Be smart. But I think that that's the sign of, okay, I'm mature enough to now move forward.
Yeah. I mean, and then be prepared, right? And I would say, have a couple of resources available, right? So not just people, but also books. Carol Dweck's, growth mindset book. I mean, phenomenal stuff. Again, Never Eat Alone, right? With Keith Ferrazzi. Be prepared, then go take your risks, and whatever happens, happens, right? And you're gonna pivot anyway. It's ready, fire, aim, right? Ready, fire, aim. So ready, fire, and then you're gonna have to pivot anyway.
That reminds me of a phrase, Dan. Success lives at the intersection of preparation and opportunity, right? We've heard some version of that.
Yeah,
but
chance favors the prepared mind.
Same thing,
right?
That concept is essentially take a damn risk.
Yeah, right. And then have ice cream, right? gotta have ice cream.
Chocolate. Yeah. Honestly, no one is going to say, nice job that you took that risk, that gamble. Even when it didn't pay off, you've learned something. Like, it's okay to have yourself an ice cream, like a little cone, and be like, okay, this is just for me. I live my life for me. You should do the same for you.
Right. Whatever your ice cream is, right? Go find your ice cream. Go.
I think acknowledging your progress forward, even if it's herky jerky, up, down, like that's how life really works. What's the old thing of you think success is a straight line, but it ends up being the squiggles?
Yeah, it's like this. Yeah.
You have to be the one to take yourself by the scruff of the neck and be like, okay, we've learned a lesson here. We're going to go celebrate the small win. It's you're responsible for yourself. So you have to manage yourself.
Yeah. Everybody's responsible for themselves. Right. And maybe you're responsible for other people too. And that's okay. Right. But at least if you have the right context, the right mindset, then what's the worst that can happen?
One more thing I want to say about failure. You won't, I forget where I read this, but it's true. You won't live long enough to do all the failures yourself and learn all the lessons in your own life. So you have to learn from the failures of others. So the more failures you can learn from, which means study and observing, and it doesn't have to be like formal reading a book. It's you're looking out at the business landscape right now, and you can see when companies miss the boat. You see what happened. Like, why is Apple not releasing an AI thing? You recognize when companies stumble, and then you learn. Okay, be more innovative. Take more like, and that might apply in your own career. You watch the person ahead of you make a bad move with the boss. Like, okay, Monday morning is not the time to hit them up for the raise. Whatever. My point is, you can manage that, and you can learn quicker if you take an opportunity to find the failures that are lessons for you.
Yeah, keep taking shots, right? Keep taking game-winning shots.
That's it. Right? That's where they come from.
That's it.
All right, good session, Dana.
Thank you so much for joining another episode of Everything to Gain. You can watch all of our episodes on our YouTube channel, which is at E2G Show. Again, that is at E2G Show, right? So, what?
I'm pointing at the emblem here.
Oh, yes. Over there.
Over
there. At E2G Show on YouTube.
We appreciate you guys listening. Honestly, the purpose of this program is just to help folks who are a little, lower on the learning curve. God knows Dan and I could learn some things as well. But if you've lived a little bit, grab some people, pull them up the rock. It's a journey. Life is a long journey, and we can help each other. And that's the purpose of this program.
Yeah. We lift as we climb, right? I mean, that's the mantra that we live. Thanks everybody for joining.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Marc, good seeing you, man. Have a great weekend.
You too, my friend. Always a pleasure.
We will be back sometime next week, for our next show of E2G, episode 13. So, everybody, have a good weekend.
Good luck, guys.